Hey guys, Dr. Tom Moorcroft here, and we're welcoming you back to another episode of the Healing from Lyme Disease Summit. And today it's a real treat to bring to you Dr. Monisha Bhanot, who is a new person, a new friend in my world, someone who I recently met. And as soon as we started talking, I knew we had to bring her on and have a conversation because, she's a board certified pathologist, which I think is really unique. And of all of the Lyme things I've been to, I almost never actually talked to a pathologist who's actually been able to see these things, other than maybe a researcher. But she is someone who's so interesting because go to her website, you see nutrigenomics, biohacker, and talking about functional culinary medicine. And also she's a lifestyle physician. And so I really wanted to talk about what all that meant. And really, one of the things, as you know, is so important to me is like really where healthy living does really come from embracing who you are as a person, how your unique body is designed. And really, we're looking to improve our cellular health and get more in touch with ourselves. And so this is like her whole message. I've seen her talk and I was just so blown away. So Monisha, thanks for showing up today and taking time out of your massively busy schedule. And I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And looking forward to talking with you and your Lyme community about what I know about how we can help these individuals who are suffering with this.
Yeah, and one of the coolest parts is so many people here know part of my story is I started to heal through Ashtanga yoga, through different parts of learning a little bit about Ayurveda, learning a hell of a lot about my body that I didn't quite even understand. So before we kind of dive into everything, like maybe you could tell us a little bit of your background and what brought you to nutrition and pathology in this really unique way. Because I think this is the part that got me so interested in having this conversation with you. So I'd love for everyone to just know a little bit more about you and your journey.
Okay, sounds great. So I am, as you already mentioned, a board certified pathologist, but I'm also a board certified integrative medicine physician and culinary medicine physician. So what brought me to pathology is that there's so much vast number of diseases out there. And what a pathologist does, for those who might not know, is we are looking at the body on multiple levels, from the cells to the tissues, to the organs, to the blood, pretty much anything in the human body we are examining. And most of us, a majority of us, are doing it on live patients. So there's only a small number of pathologists that work in the forensics department, and the rest of us are all working on live patients. So we really want to look at what is going on from both a clinical laboratory perspective. So there's anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and cytopathology. Those are my 3 board certifications in pathology. So with that, what I have done is I have spent a number of years looking at individual tissue under the microscope. And yes, I have seen spirochetes under a microscope. So I thought this would be a great conversation to have because, it's one thing to make a diagnosis, but then it's another thing when how can you help the individual patient? So that's where I incorporate my integrative lifestyle medicine and my functional culinary medicine to really help people get to improve their cellular health. So that's my focus, is really improving cellular health, whatever issue you have going on. And we know that in Lyme disease, Lyme disease specifically affects dendritic cells in individuals. And these dendritic cells are found in our immune tissue, in our immune cells. So I think that's worth having a conversation about how can we kind of protect these cells, and what can we do as individuals to kind of take control.
Yeah, I love it. It's so funny. I talk to so many people and they don't even know what's going on. And I mean, one of the things we were kind of, in terms of like, we talk about spirochetes, like we're so well versed in them, but then when you talk with a pathologist who's actually worked really closely, one of the things you mentioned kind of as we were about to turn the camera on was about the skin lesions and stuff. And I think that and how you've actually been able to biopsy these things and look at them. So a lot of us will talk about the erythema migrans rash and the data between when it's there and when it's not there. But just because it's cool. And like, I think it's important for people, knowledge is power as long as you know how to apply it. But what do we actually, what's causing this? Like, what are we seeing in these rashes that are either the bullseye or even just kind of like, for me, I say like red pock marks. You get this red, purple, splotchy EMs, but yeah, what's going on in there?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Tom. So I'm a little bit of a science geek, so I love kind of just looking at everything. So what will happen is if you get a skin rash and you happen to go to a dermatologist and they happen to biopsy it, many rashes can get biopsied. Sometimes they just get treated and they don't go away. So that's a great indication to really biopsy and see what's going on, because there could be so many underlying causes for rashes, especially if you didn't know that you got bit by a tick. But when we're looking specifically at the rash of an individual who has had Lyme disease, what we're seeing is in the epidermis, which is the superficial layer of the skin, you have the epidermis and then the dermis. What we are seeing is both superficial and deep. So that means both in the epidermis and in the dermis, infiltration with inflammatory cells. So specifically, there'll be neutrophils there, lymphocytes, plasma cells, eosinophils, and mast cells. So it's just this span of inflammation around the like at the rash, okay? Which the adjacent skin, which would not be affected, would not have that type of inflammation. In addition, depending on how long that rash has been there, we might see some of the skin becoming necrotic. So it's what we call dermal necrosis. So that can also be present. And then the most fascinating thing for me would be, we stain it for different things to see, all right, is there a yeast or fungus there? Is there a bacteria there? And specifically, we can see spirochetes with a silver stain. So they come up like these little squiggly things that will be identified in these inflammatory areas.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, well, it's not awesome if it happens to you, but having had it happen to me in the past, it would have been cool for some. I think I'd have been much cooler with the whole situation if someone had actually biopsied my mega rash and showed me what was going on. And I think it's interesting too that, and we're going to dive into this deeply because it's like that inflammatory component is so critical, and we talk about it a lot. But I don't think that to be honest, I don't think many people sit there and think about the EM rashes like having all this inflammation. So it's like a microcosm of what's going on throughout the body. And as you were talking, something dawned on me. It's really interesting that I love how the whole summits come together, because the message that I know you're prepared to share today is right along the lines of the self-healing process that we want to have for this summit. But as you're talking, I'm like, my wife originally was thinking about being a pathologist because she would nerd out on what you just said so badly. It's so cool. But then she did this crazy thing, like go to osteopathic school and put her hands on people and start to work with the natural self-healing mechanisms, which is what we're going to be talking about boosting up. And I feel so honored that like I can host a summit where all of these people come in at the right time with the right message. And so everyone, one of the things that I really want to dive in with Dr. Monisha is, pathology is great. We've all talked about the challenges in diagnosis and treatment, but really there's you have the ability to really have such a strong impact on your foundational health. And that's one of the places where all this comes together for me. So Monisha, like where do you go? Like, so you take your pathology and now you're moving into, I've got that inflammation. I've got this thing. We've made a diagnosis, but how do you do this with patients? I mean, where do we start? What's the most important organ systems or groups of things that we should start to look at so that people actually have control over?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to look at kind of the big lifestyle aspects, right? So what you're doing on a daily basis in your 24 hours of the day. So, we look at how can we optimize your sleep, because when you're sleeping, your body is repairing itself and removing, unnecessary proteins that might be damaging your body. We are looking at how you're moving your body and you're sweating and you're exercising. And especially for individuals with Lyme, they have joint pain. And sometimes you're thinking, all right, well, I'm in pain. Let me not move my joints. because they hurt when I move them. But let me remind you that cartilage does not have a blood supply. I can tell you that as a pathologist. The only way to get nutrients to your cartilage is through the synovial fluid and to move your body. So we're looking at sleep, we're looking at movement, we're looking at toxins in your body. When we're looking at organ function, one of the biggest ones, and I think the one that's really worth diving into, because we eat food, is really our nutrition, and how are we supplying our body with the appropriate nutrition to fight disease.
Food is like something that comes up so much. So I hesitate to even pose the question this way, but I mean, gut health. I mean, this has got to be a core piece of what you're talking about, I would assume, aside from, sleep and movement, which is like I'm trying to get everybody to do. But it seems like sometimes it's a little hard for some reason, and gut health can be hard. But having the conversations we've had since we've met and like hung out, it's like so exciting to hear your take on these things. But so why don't you tell me, like, what about the gut is so important from the pathology perspective? And then maybe we can really dive into the unique aspects of your private practice that really help people ignite their own self-healing mechanism.
Yeah. So let's just say that I think most people are beginning to understand that a lot of health and disease can start in the gut. Okay. So if we look at it from that perspective, if our gut is not optimally functioned, we're kind of opening ourselves up to a host of health issues. And from that perspective, I'm looking at, and also I will say from an Ayurvedic perspective, which Ayurveda is an ancient 5,000-year-old ancient whole body system, which is really looking at how the body functions from a mind, body, and spirit level and keeping it in balance. And what we're focusing on is the gut in Ayurveda. That's a big part of the focus. And so with that, when I'm seeing individuals, I would say, even if people are coming to me for other things, 99.9% of them all have gut issues. And let me just say, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, none of that is normal. And I don't know when in society that started becoming acceptable, that having these things is normal, right? And thinking about headaches, skin rashes, other things that are a reflection of what's going on in the gut, that's also not normal. So I mean, I know sometimes patients wait to see the doctor until they're in so much pain, but I'm one of those persons who really advocates for, if you have anything going on, anything that is on your body, please don't wait. Go see a doctor, get it examined. I've worked with individuals who have waited until some masses grew on their body until they were out of control. And I understand the fear might be of knowing what that is, but I will tell you, the earlier you kind of check stuff, the earlier it can be treated accordingly. So I have just found that gut is one of the keys in really helping people heal. And we probably have, as a society, have done a disservice in sharing the information on how you can truly heal your gut.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I don't understand like why it's okay to just be like barely getting by. And I always say, like, I want people to be the world's worst viral and bacterial host, right? Like, I want Lyme spirochetes to run away. I want ticks to run away. And actually, a little tidbit that I found really interesting: prior to having Lyme disease, and even after I first had it and I got into a chronic state but didn't know it at the time, I would get bit by ticks all the time because I'm outside all the time. No matter what I did, I'd get bit. But then I started to get this, guys, move my body. With the movement, all of a sudden my body started teaching me, and it started rejecting the foods that I grew up eating, which was the standard American crap diet. And then all of a sudden I started doing this crazy thing called sleep. And when I did those three things you highlighted, all of a sudden I was like, I'm not getting bit by ticks. And it's really interesting because there's some research on pheromones and stuff, and I don't know what it is, but the healthier I got, the more the ticks weren't even coming on me. So I would agree 1,000%. So when you're talking about, because a lot of what we're talking about is conventional medicine, right? Which is only a couple hundred years old at best. And really the big pharma thing is it's probably about 100, not even 100 years old, and it's really taken off in the last 50, 60 years. Ayurveda, can we dive into this a little bit more and maybe give us an overview? Because I think this is a way to look at your body and a system of healing that I think is maybe not as well known as it needs to be in the United States. So, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about it in the Lyme community. So I think that this is a really critical introduction for people, because then not only can we talk about some of the things you could use through that tradition to help them get better, but man, you can make your food taste so good.
Yeah.
I'm a foodie, so.
Your food will taste pretty good. So like I said, Ayurveda is a ancient whole body system. It's been around over 5,000 years, and in translation, Ayurveda really means the science of life. Okay. So what we're doing is we are looking at individuals from a perspective of what is their inner constitution, like what were they born with as their inner constitution, and how our lifestyle basically takes those constitutions. And there's 3 constitutions. It's a Pitta, Kapha, and Vata. And what our lifestyle, our American busy lifestyle does, it creates an imbalance in these doshas. And the ultimate goal is to bring it as much into balance as possible. Now, there's plenty of quizzes you can take to figure out what your dosha is. I will say somebody who is really type A personality, very fiery on the go, is a Pitta individual. And those are usually the ones who are, always doing something, and they can very easily get out of balance. They can get out of balance when they're always on the go and burn out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you can have the individuals who are Kapha. And when I think of somebody who is a Kapha individual, there's somebody who's very grounded, maybe a little bit on the heavier side. And it takes a little bit something to get them moving. So they're Kapha. They can be a little too grounded, right? Then you could have somebody who's Vata, and a Vata person reminds me of like a buzzing bee, somebody who's just always like very airy, can't really focus, is kind of just here or there, like just a free spirit, right? And so we all have a little bit of these doshas, and what we want to do is kind of bring them into balance. I mean, we might have a predominant type, but when we're out of balance, we have too much of one. So since I saw you react to Pitta, I'm assuming you're a Pitta type. So we can talk about, do you feel like, do you like spicy foods?
To a decent degree, not psycho, but yeah.
Yeah. Do spicy foods like you back?
Oh yeah, no problem.
No problem. Okay, so maybe your Pitta is not that imbalanced, but individuals who have a Pitta really would benefit from having cooling foods, not spicy foods.
It's
right?
interesting too, because I think in the past, I think I was like, I would be like, oh, Vata with some Pitta, but then it's like, but then you look at the imbalances, and whenever I hear the imbalances, I'm like, yeah, Pitta all day. Like I could, it's like, I'm going, but it's like, it does. But I don't, it's definitely, I like the spice, but it's not always the, like, over the topness. And it depends. So this is an interesting question that's coming up for me. And I think that what we learn from this is applicable to everything, but there's days of the week or weeks of the month or whatever, where I'm like, bring on the heat. And other days I'm like, I had that last week. This is so freaking hot. I can't handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think you have to kind of, if you understand what your constitution is and kind of understand what are the things that bring your body into balance versus imbalance, that's kind of like an important part to start. So when we're looking at these 3 doshas, or so Vata, like I said, is kind of like that airy part. So Vata is an energy that's really associated with movement. So it's interesting that you said when you started moving your body, right? So you were kind of moving some of that energy around. Pitta is a part of the energy system that's with metabolism, so your metabolic system. right? So that's why it's fiery. It's your digestive system. And then kapha is that body structure. So like I said, that grounding, that kind of form. So I mean, I would consider this in the spectrum of a complementary system. Like, I think, you take the conventional, you take the complementary, you see how does this apply to me individually. And one of the things I want to emphasize is the more you understand your body and the more you can pay attention to these subtle signs it's going to get you closer to healing. Because sometimes we're not paying attention to what our body is saying. And I say any symptom is basically your cells are communicating to you, right? So think about that. Like, your cells are they're not only sending messages to each other in the body, but they're sending you messages. And it's really your choice to listen to, all right, what is this actually telling me? Did I have a good day? Did I keep my inflammation down? Did I move my body? Did I have my optimal sleep? What are my cells telling me?
It's so good, because one of the things that I love to talk about is, and I've said it in, oh God, probably 70 or 80% of the interviews we've done, is stop comparing yourself to other people. And I love what I've learned from Ayurveda, because it allows me to be a unique individual with a unique blend of these. But there are kind of, in my world, a couple of groups of people, right? Like that I see in the office, certain types of people where they're trying to always apply themselves to somebody else. Or if someone else doesn't react like them, they're trying to either make themselves feel worse or them feel worse. I'm like, look, no, actually 5,000 plus years ago, people understood that there's a different constitution for each person, and we have them in different percentages at different times. And even just, my brain, because I do this, like I have to go. I'm thinking back to different times. Hey, there are times in the year and times in my healing versus my more well period where I was in these different modes. And I was just cool with it, because I was like, heck, when I got cool with my body healed. So I think that what you're saying is so full of wisdom. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah, and I talk a lot about this with my patients, because I'm always talking about how do we go from these daily habits, when I think of the word habits, it always has a negative connotation to me. Like, how do we go from these habits that maybe aren't so good for us, and we go to routines, which we kind of get bored with, like the routine of going to the gym, to the routine of, whatever we're doing, to really becoming intentional with our life and creating rituals around it. And for me, that's like, it has the greatest amount of intention behind it, and it has the greatest amount of self-awareness, right? The more self-aware and intentional you are on the spectrum of life, you can place those rituals into how can you heal, right? So when I'm thinking of individuals who have Lyme exposure, and maybe they are suffering from some fatigue or some brain fog or something like that, right? So you want to balance your energy there. Make sure you're not kind of burning out at that candle, because you know that it's going to take time for you to recover, right? So maybe putting in a ritual, like a bedtime ritual or something that you can use to optimize your cellular care, your cellular health, would be a lot more intentional and a lot more caring for your body.
I couldn't agree more. It's like, I mean, I have like the supplement I take because I'm so active and I want to get a little inflamed just from, muscle stuff. So I've got my systemic enzyme, but it's like, and I've got my water, I've got all these other supplements I take. I've got my self-care routine, but I use this word ritual all the time, Monisha, because to me, it is a sacred, everything you're doing. Like, the more I feel like we're taught to like devalue the good things we do for ourselves. We minimize. I have water during my interviews. Well, it's because my throat gets dry, right? No, I have this here because I love myself and I know that my body requires water. And yes, I would like to have a palate that's not all while I'm talking, but the reality is I make it a ritual. And when I pick up the glass and, I just think it's so important that a lot of our people get pill fatigue and treatment fatigue. I'm like, it's because you're making yourself do something. Whereas I'm like, I make it a sacred event. And so then you can harness the placebo, you can harness the energetics, and it's a lot easier when it's that like that bedtime ritual. How cool does that sound compared to a bedtime routine? I'm like, I brushed my teeth and I took a leak. Way, woo, you know.
No, do something good for yourself, right? I mean,
And take credit for when you do something good for yourself, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so necessary, and I think that kind of brings me back to, all right, you're taking these medications for some of your symptoms, and we know that individuals who have Lyme disease have probably been treated with antibiotics, which has not done very well on their gut, because we know what antibiotic use does to the gut, right? So that's where we get back to, how can we use nutrition to manage what's going on in our health? So I have like a few key points that I kind of want to consider, right? Because we want to focus on, one, reducing inflammation, right? Because we know that this spirochete reduces inflammation, causes a cytokine release, right? So we can think about nutrition from a supplement point, right? So things that are going to fight off, right? And some of those supplements that individuals might see or read about, you can also find them in foods. So I always say food first, and then if needed, supplement, right? So some of those ingredients that I'm thinking of is things like glutathione and alpha lipoic acid, which alpha lipoic acid is really important for your energy production and your antioxidant activity. But you can get it from spinach and broccoli. So let me ask you, or let me ask you guys listening, when was the last time you had spinach and broccoli? And I will tell you, most of my patients are like, I think I had it last week. I want you to eat a lot more of that, right? Or even thinking about glutathione, right? Because glutathione is a master in our detoxification pathway, right? So as we are building up toxins in our body, and medications are a form of toxins, right? So we want to optimize our glutathione pathway. So we might get this from eating nuts and seeds, a variety. And when I'm thinking of food, I'm thinking a rainbow of fruits and vegetables, and I am thinking as many different variety of nuts and seeds, like not just one, like there's a lot more in the world than almonds, you know, experiment a little bit. And that's where the culinary medicine comes in, is like, I really want you to, as I kind of tell my patients, when you're eating mushrooms, right? And most people, when they tell me they eat mushrooms, they tell me about their portobellas and their baby bellas. And I'm like, that's great. Those are your Fords, your Toyotas. I want you to upgrade to your Lamborghinis and your Maseratis and have your Asian mushrooms, your shiitake, your maitake. So really optimize what the earth has given us with those nutrients, right? So I want you to kind of start thinking about food in that real way, that food can really heal the body. Because food, at the end of the day, has vitamins,
all you need,
minerals, antioxidants. It has things we don't even have names for yet. And the more different variety you eat, the more of those ingredients you can get in your body.
Yeah, it's so interesting you bring it up though, because a lot of the folks that are talking about some of the herbal research for antimicrobial herbs are like, well, the reason they're so good is they're pretty much non-toxic. Some could be used a certain way or in a unique individual, but for the most part, like our meds are like one or two things, and that's all they do. And our food, like our herbs, it's better to do a whole herb than an extract and all this other stuff. And well, and the problem is, like, we extract whole herbs. So we're in whole herb extract, everyone is fine. We're just talking about pulling out a constituent chemical. But it's like, why would I pull a chemical out of a food? And then, you know, it's like kind of beta carotene versus a carrot. There's like 300 and some other nutrients in there besides beta carotene that you can't get from beta carotene. So I love the point, you know.
Yeah, and I think on the spectrum of food, since you brought up, like, we're trying to take these ingredients out when the really the synergistic effect of nutrients is from that variety and from eating whole foods, right? And as many plant foods as you can, whole foods, plant plant predominant diet is, it was interesting because last week I was on a trip and we were getting these meals served to us, and I was watching everybody how they would eat their meal, and they get their meal and they take the little parsley sprig and put it off to the side, and then they get their dessert with the mint leaf and put it off to the side. And I'm like, I think you guys are going to want to eat that. So they're like, but why? Because I want you to start thinking about food as nutrition and healing for your body, right? So explaining to them what the benefits of having mint is and how it helps with your digestion, or cilantro, and like, I think it's a foreign concept because we think of these things as garnishes, and I'm like, no, give me a whole thing of mint, put it in my tea, give me all the cilantro. So yeah, it's interesting because
right. Well, that little Ayurvedic dinner thing we went to where they served us it was, what is it, kind of like a riff on the golden milk or whatever, but it was like really interesting. It's like, there's the whole, they said cinnamon's in it. And then there's a whole cinnamon stick, and like half of us are eating them. And there's a slice of ginger root. And then there's all these different pieces of it. And separately, I'm like, boy, that like golden milk tastes good. And it was really, I think, golden coconut milk to be exact. But the thing was, when you put them all together, oh my God, it felt so good when you paid attention to it.
Well, there was some key ingredients in that golden milk that we had, right? So, and these are ones that I think any individual can kind of have, right? So turmeric, I think everybody is familiar with, of the anti-inflammatory properties. It is definitely in every Indian household. We've been having it for many, many years, probably in all of our meals. And it has very high, besides antioxidant, also antimicrobial effects, right? So having your golden milk is a way to do it, but also I like to not only have it in a beverage, but put it in almost every dish. Like you can take rice and add turmeric to your rice. You can take quinoa and add turmeric to your quinoa, right? So you were saying some of those other things that were in there. I like turmeric because it has gut healing benefits, right? But then also adding things like coriander. Coriander seeds are a commonly used food in Indian cooking, and they can be very helpful for individuals suffering with an upset stomach, individuals with an occasional heartburn. Another favorite is fennel. Fennel has anti-inflammatory, so the little fennel seeds. Plus, they're also high in magnesium, which can help you sleep. They're a good source of iron and calcium, and they can even help with decreasing a little bit of bloating and gastric discomfort, right? So we got coriander, we got fennel, we've got the turmeric, we've got cumin. Cumin is another great spice in the anti-inflammatory spectrum. Cinnamon, you already mentioned, there was a whole cinnamon stick in there, not this little bit of cinnamon powder, but a whole cinnamon stick that you could chew on afterwards, right? So, and then another one that recently I've really had a lot of people start using is bay leaves. Now, often we might see bay leaves in soups and stews and stuff like that, and you pick out the leaf and you kind of throw it away and you don't really eat it, right? But individuals who are having gut issues, which, like I said, most individuals might not want to admit it, but I'm pretty sure they have it, right? Bay leaves can ease irritable bowel, and it can kind of ease lowering the toxicity that's going on with, that constipation and that buildup stuff. So boiling bay leaves and drinking bay leaf water, quick and easy.
That's really interesting. You know what I love about doing this is, like, I know about bay leaves a little bit, but I didn't know that. And so now I literally have like 3 patients I'm going to send a message to. That's why we all work together and talk like this. I mean, all the other stuff is came because I studied a lot of this Indian tradition of yoga. And then as I started feeling better, I'm like, if my body's doing yoga and I like this and I like Indian food to begin with, I'm like, maybe I should find out what real healthy Indian food is rather than what you might just get doing the Americanized version. And all these herbs and foods you're talking about, I'm like, are in our diet all the time. I love it so much.
Are you hungry?
I am. I'm actually salivating quite a bit now. I don't need my water.
I'm going to give you a good nighttime tea to have. Okay. and that is CCFT. So it is really just a blend of spices. So cumin seeds, coriander seeds, and fennel seeds. And you can just take this mixture, I'll make a jar full so I don't have to mix them all together at the same time. So maybe like 6 tablespoons each, you have a little mixture. And then when you want to prepare it, you just boil 1 teaspoon with a cup of water, right? And what you're getting is that combination, the cumin, coriander, and fennel, to relieve any indigestion at the end of the day, to stimulate that digestive fire, or agni as we call it. It can help absorb the nutrients from the day and smooth that inflammation, that stomach lining. Each of the spices on their own have their own benefits that I've already mentioned, but really that combination, you can enjoy that multiple times throughout the day. It's super easy to make, no caffeine in it. So if you're worried about caffeine, it's really just these spices. So CCFT, I would recommend that.
That sounds incredible. I'm going to do that today because like our whole family's on this. And it's like one of the other things for our parents, like most of the time when you're telling me your kid won't, it's like you won't ask them to do it because you're not willing to do it yourself. And all these things are like, most of the parents who talk to me, Monisha, like they haven't even asked their kid to do it. I understand if your kid's like super psychotic with pans or whatever, I get all those things, right? I feel for you. That's why we all do this and we work with you. But the thing is like, so many of the things we think our kids will and won't do is for 2 reasons. One is we haven't asked them to do it. And 2 is we're unwilling to do it ourselves. So grab some CCFT, do it yourself. Cause like my daughter, I guarantee you both the golden milk we talked about and the CCFT, she has golden milk once in a while, but I'll even admit I've been so busy since we got back. I forgot to make it for them in this kind of new way that I learned at this experience. And I'm like, we need to do that. But the CCFT, she'll be all about. And I know she'll be all about it for 2 reasons. One is because my wife and I'll do it. And I know she's into exploring things, but I know it's going to be really good for her because I've already decided that it is until it isn't. But she loves these things because we do it together and it does become that ritual.
It becomes that ritual, right? And so you just made me think like, so my niece, she's only 3 years old, and she started her journey in this world and kind of locked down living with my parents, so with her grandparents. And my parents are both avid gardeners. I mean, they grow every fruit, vegetable you can imagine. And in the Northeast, they had 150 persimmons on their tree this past year, apples, pears, they're growing it all. Mint leaves, holy basil leaves, curry leaves, like pretty much everything, zucchini, squash.
I want to go live with them. Holy moly.
Yeah, everybody does. But
right?
So anyway, this little girl, three-year-old, grew up in this environment. So she is used to going and picking leaves, like mint leaves and curry leaves, and chewing on these things and eating them as a child. So can you imagine like having that experience? Like, we take our kids from where they are, enter them into school, and what they're feeding them in even the best of schools isn't very good, right? So it's really like when you mention your kids, it's parents who are going to introduce kids to what they really need to thrive in this world.
Yeah. And I know, you're so active on social media. And then, when we met, we were talking about like your branding, which is very appropriate, as everyone can see, for our topic in this summit. But, but it is about growth in life. And, think about it. It's like Lyme disease, and we're playing on words a little bit because it's Lyme, Connecticut, not Lyme, the color. But isn't it kind of non-coincidental that one of the most potent healing aspects for Lyme disease or any of the associated conditions and the autoimmunity and the inflammation and the sleep disruption, the brain disruption and the gut disruption that it causes is going back to things that grow from the planet? We've seen this with the herbs that treat it. We've seen it with the foods we've been talking about. I just find it kind of interesting. So one of the other things that really actually when we were thinking about what we were going to talk about today, we talked, one of the aspects that a lot of people run into is just the cost of a lot of stuff. the cost of the protocols, the doctors, the testing, which is a whole nother topic. But then they're like, it's hard to buy organic foods, or maybe I want to start moving in this direction, but I'm concerned about toxicity and pesticides. A lot of people are talking about glyphosate. And you're one of the few people I've ever talked to that within the first few moments of a conversation is teaching me about cleaning and prepping my food at home. So I really wanted to take a moment, to just give you a chance to share some of those tips that you were sharing with me, so everybody can benefit from it, because this is so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, the cost of food is going up, right? So trying to eat organic may not be available to everybody. And also you might live in a part of the country where you don't even have access, like you're driving an hour to go to a grocery store. I would say always check your freezer section, first of all, because you can get organic produce that's frozen for a very comparable price, and it won't go bad. Like, it can sit in your freezer and you'll be like, oh, I bought broccoli, but it went bad and now I feel bad for buying it, right? So definitely check your freezer section. When you buy produce, I recommend, especially individuals who buy herbs, they decide, all right, I'm going to go eat all the cilantro to detoxify my body, but then it wilts in 2 days. So I recommend to individuals, when they buy their cilantro, eat it fresh for the first couple of days. The next 2 days, turn it into a green sauce with a little bit of garlic. Garlic is also anti-inflammatory, a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And now you've got this green sauce to drizzle. I mean, if you do it with a cilantro, it's a chimichurri. If you do it with parsley, it's a gremolata. If you do it with basil, it's a pesto, right? Then the remainder of that green sauce, put into ice cube trays. And then when you're strapped for time, you pop out an ice cube tray, which then has your herb, your garlic, and your olive oil in a pan, and you can saute whatever you want with it. This is easy for the week, right? So those are just a few things. Then as for buying produce, even if you do buy organic, I want you to wash it, right? And I don't want you to just wash it with water. There's a couple different washes that I do. I generally do a saltwater soak. And what that is really taking soaking whatever fruits or vegetables in a thing of water with salt and soaking it for 20 minutes. And this will get rid of most of the residue that you're going to have. I think they say a 10% saltwater solution will get rid of most of the residues from our common pesticides. All right, that's what the research says. So I will do that. Even in my organic greens, I will still do that. Another one you can do is a vinegar soak to remove pesticides, right, from your fruits and vegetables. So this would be a 4 parts to 1 part, right? So 4 parts water to 1 part vinegar. And you can soak this also for about 20 minutes. And this can help reduce many types of bacteria that are on it. So after you've soaked it, then you're going to rinse it off, right? And then lastly, I would say a baking soda. So these are all ingredients we should have at home: salt, vinegar, baking soda, right? And research shows that this can help also reduce, and you're going to do 1 teaspoon of baking soda to 2 cups of water for about 20 minutes, and the chemicals will come off. You see those, I forget what they're called, those sprays, like those veggie sprays and stuff. Those actually have not been shown to be effective. So save your money and use the real stuff, like vinegar, salt, baking soda, right? I think that's where you can really make your money count. And if you can grow your own stuff, I've become a little bit of a hydroponic farmer. I don't like to get my hands too dirty. So I have a standing hydroponic thing that I can grow all these different greens in. I grow sprouts on my kitchen counter. So there's a lot of things you can do to really source your food from yourself.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most key things. Like, we become so reliant on the store, and yeah, you have to be, but to some degree, but the more we can bring that at home. And again, that's to me like that ritual. I'm actually eating food that I grew with the purpose of nourishing my body. It's so good. So Manisha, this is amazing. I mean, we've got our golden milk, our CCFT. We know 3 ways to clean our foods, and we also know about dendritic cells now and our doshas. So, um, one of the things that I think is interesting, I'd love you to kind of bring us home and wrap up with anything you feel like we may have, overlooked or not talked about yet. But one of the things, it's like your hashtag on Instagram and everywhere else in the world is self care. And I just think that's such a cool little riff on self care. But why, what's that all about? And, are there any, kind of pieces that we may not have touched on that you think are super critical for people who are healing and going on to live an amazing life need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to mention one more. Well, I could probably speak about herbs forever, but I want to mention one more for gut healing. And that one is triphala. If you have not heard of that, that is it's triphala, spelled Triphala, and it's a combination of 3 herbs, right? And one of them being amla. Amla is a very, very high source of vitamin C, which the body needs to detoxify, right? It also got polyphenols, antibacterial, anti-inflammation, right? So when you're dealing with any gut issues or any kind of infectious process in general, amla can be really healing for healing your gut, because if you've allowed things to enter, right? So I just wanted to mention that because it is something that I have seen people might not be familiar with, and it can be really nourishing for the body, and it's used in Ayurveda quite a bit. So I wanted to mention that. But as for the hashtag self-care is self-care. So bringing it back to that and kind of rounding that out, the reason my focus is really on that is because at the end of the day, we are made up of our cells, which make up our tissues, which make up our organs, which we want them to function, right? So if we're not taking care of ourselves and really listening to our body, I kind of call them angry cells. Like when you have symptoms, your cells are angry. You need to go listen to them. I know what they look like under the microscope. Don't worry about looking at them under the microscope, but I will tell you, they look very abnormal and they're angry, right? So they need things to nourish them. The only person who can nourish their cells is you. Only you can do it. I can't do it for you. I can guide you. You can guide somebody. But at the end of the day, it's the individual's responsibility. What does my body need? I need to listen to my body. What are my cells telling me? What are the nutrients it needs? What is the movement it needs? Does it need sleep, right? So coming back to that whole lifestyle basics, right? Let's not make health harder than it has to be. Let's keep it simple.
Right. I think it's just so important to me because like what you're focusing on and the way you talk about it is like that inner ecosystem, like, the cells, the tissues, the organs, like the whole thing. And a lot of us, we've been talking about sort of the external ecosystem as well, and our interaction with each other. And it's not like everything changes just like when we hit skin and we call it like me. It's like, I mean, literally these cells are unique, independent organisms that make up you, and give them some love, So I just think it's so important.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we did. I'm sure other people might have spent time talking about, but give your cells love. Talk nicely to them. Treat your body good. Talk nicely to yourself because your cells are listening, right? So that goes back to your mindset and how you think about like everything that's going on. The mind is very powerful, and I just like you might talk to your plants. And you ever notice like there's studies that show when you talk to your plants, which plants are made from their own cells, right? The plants are healthier. Talk to your own cells in your body.
Right. Well, and talk to them in a really nice way. Like I talk to people about, hey, think about, I mean, just for the whole day, just write down the thoughts that you say the most to yourself and take an inventory. And you can do it for a whole day, but most people need about 6 or 8 minutes. And they've already said all the nasty things that they're going to repeat to themselves over and over and over. And stop calling yourself a moldy and a limey. You're someone who is experiencing these symptoms that are from these pathogens, these toxins. But the one thing I really, Monisha, is always try to tell people is like, look, your body is always in 100% perfect compensation. If not, you'd be dead. So thank your cells for doing the best they can. And then say thank you by giving them all these beautiful herbs, these healing rituals, this sleep and movement. And again, guys, I understand not everybody can go to the gym or run a marathon, but you can move, right? If the only thing you can do is take a deeper breath than the previous one, then hey, you're moving. Move your arms, move your legs, laying in bed, get in the tub, whatever it is, have someone help you move if you need it. We found this as osteopaths back in the, 1918 or something, the Spanish flu epidemic. Osteopaths did crazy ass shit, Monisha. We opened windows and got fresh air. And then we helped when people were too sick to move their own body, we would move their body for them. We would get the lymphatics and all the cells. But yeah, the negative self-talk, like when you notice it, cool. You can say, wow, I'm in that habit. Thank you because to me, when your body, like you said, when your body hurts, your cells are telling you something. Mm-hmm. When you notice, become aware of your negative thoughts, great. Your body's telling you something. Just say thank you and then redo it. Put better thoughts in, put better food in, put a lot of love in.
A lot of love. The body needs love. Love your body.
Yeah.
Take care of your body. Yeah. And it's your ecosystem. You're absolutely right. And it's, the ecosystem needs support. Just like you take your car for a car wash and an oil change, our bodies need to be taken care of. So don't ignore your body.
Oh, so good. So one of the things you mentioned a moment ago is a lot of people, sometimes you need a guide, but we can't do it for you. And I know that a lot of people are going to resonate with the conversation we've had. I also know that not only do you talk about all the Ayurveda and all this other stuff, but I know that you make really cool gluten-free, vegan, chocolate chip cookies and all these other things. So if people are interested in learning about like what the heck functional culinary medicine really is, because for me, I'm a foodie. And one of the things I was so afraid about was when I had to heal, I was going to have to eat stuff that tasted like crap. And I found that wasn't true. And that was killer. That was the part that allowed me to really get into this. And now I'm healthier than I ever was because I love this stuff because I feel the nourishment and I could see it heal me. So if someone wants to learn more about what you're doing and all the cool stuff that you're talking about, including, I know your hydroponic system even is on your website, where can they reach out to you if they want to learn more? And also if they want the guidance that you provide so well?
Yeah, absolutely. So on all platforms and social media, I'm at Dr. Bhanot. So that's my name, and my website is drbhanot.com. So I'm pretty easy to find. I'm the only one, so you could definitely
and
go.
And if you want to be sure, if there's going to be a lot of green.
There will be a lot of green because I find green is very healing. And well, hey, limes, like you already mentioned, limes, depending on which way you spell them, Lyme or Lime, are green, right? So we need to heal.
Yeah.
So yeah, find me at drbhanot.com, and whatever I can do to kind of help you explore your body from a cellular aspect, that's what I'm here to do.
Awesome. And everyone, as per usual, I will make sure that we have all Dr. Bhanot's information over on our summit resource page. So it's nice and easy. But man, Monisha, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. And I mean, this is what's so cool about being a doctor. I get to like travel around and meet cool people who are like, I'm a quadruple certified five. Sorry. Because it's 3 pathologies and then IFM and culinary medicine, man. It's just like, it's crazy, but I get to have these conversations with people who are like on the forefront of healing. But it's so funny, like the pathology people are like the put your head down in the microscope people, and they tend to be really conservative. But then here you go, all of those pieces, yet you're doing this because you know how important the cells are. So I'm just so grateful for you to be here. And I'm so honored. I mean, that everyone like send lots of love to Dr. Monisha, because she literally, like, we talked about this like a week and a half ago, and we're recording this late on the weekend for both of us, especially for her. And that's how dedicated she is to sharing this message with you guys so that you can heal even more. So let's send lots of love to Dr. Monisha Bhanot. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Tom, for having me. And thank you to the Lyme community for inviting me in. And I look forward to your healing journeys.
Nice. Everyone. And again, also lots of gratitude and love to you guys. We're doing this because I've been there. So many of the other people in the summit have been there. And our goal for you is to know how wonderful and important and loving you are, how much you deserve to receive healing. And the first step in receivership is to say, like, to yourselves, like, hey, like, I love you. Here's some food. I'm taking responsibility because that's how much I love myself. And I know that you're going to all heal to that next level and just have those dreams and those hopes, and we'll all together help you get there. So thanks for joining us for this episode of the Healing from Lyme Disease Summit, and we'll see you in the next episode.